Hello, everyone, and welcome to day 3 of NPA's Neuroplasticity Lunch and Learn Boot Camp. Thank you all for joining us. My name is Sherry Odom. If you haven't been here this week, I'll introduce myself. I am the Executive Director and Founder for the Neuroplasticity Alliance. I created this organization to help generate awareness, access to, and development of neuroplasticity-based therapies out of need, quite frankly. If you've heard this story and have been here all week, please forgive me as I repeat it for those who are newcomers. As I've mentioned before, and as you may have seen on some of my other videos, my life was significantly impacted for the positive after trying several neuroplasticity-based therapies for family members, which included depression, learning difficulties, and multiple sclerosis. And after years and years of trying other therapies and then finding these and having such miraculous changes for so many different people and for such different situations, I sort of got on a bandwagon to help spread that word and make sure others in the same situation as myself knew about these, could access them, help address the barriers in the industry that are prohibiting these from being utilized for more people, such as insurance coverage, looking at comprehensive assessment topics and initiatives like that, in addition to helping to bring all these practitioners in this space together so we can start functioning as an industry. So that is really why NPA is here. And in celebration of Brain Awareness Week, which is March 13th through the 18th, and actually the month of March is dedicated to brain awareness as well. We are doing this Lunch and Learn series, and we hope that you find value of it. Please feel free to reach out to me if you have suggestions or topics you'd like to see covered. After the week is up, we will have our recordings posted up on our YouTube channel. If you're interested, it's Neuroplasticity Alliance. We did a summit back in October of last year. There are several great interviews from that week-long session that are available there if you want to go take a look at that. I will be sending the link out to everyone when I send out the link to these interviews as well, so you can have access to that. As I mentioned earlier, NPA is a nonprofit. We are a 501c3, and we are functioning based on donations. So if you find our content valuable and you'd like to make a donation, please do so. You can do it directly on our website on the homepage. We have had a great week. We've had quite a few speakers with us. Yesterday was Brain Balance, Dina Smith, who spoke about learning differences and how they use a hemispheric integration approach to help children up to the age of 24 with developmental and cognitive issues, emotional regulation as well. And that was fascinating. They use a program created by a parent who also was a functional neurologist, as our speaker is today, and created that program based on his need and his knowledge of really stemming out of brain injury and applying that to children with learning difficulties and testing that through fMRI to come up with a protocol, which was very interesting. So today we are going to hear from Dr. John Hartman. He is a functional neurologist who is located in New Jersey. He has a specialty in brain injury, treating patients with brain injury, as well as quite a few other things. He's going to talk to us a little bit about the BEARS program, which he uses for that. He also has quite a few other therapies in his toolbox, including acoustic wave therapy and photobiomodulation, which we're interested to hear about as well. You can reach Dr. Hartman at the Hartman Center. That's the HARTMAN Center.com on his website, and you can read his full bio there. It looks like Dr. Hartman is in here. So let me make sure he has access here. Dr. Hartman, are you there?
Yes, how you doing?
Doing well. Let's see. I can hear you, but I can't see you yet.
I don't know why.
Is your camera is on? Let me see here. Give me just a minute. Maybe I need to make an adjustment on my end.
I don't see an option.
Yeah, I think it's on my end.
Yep.
Let me,
Hi.
there we go. Okay, perfect.
Okay.
All right. So, Dr. Hartman, do you have, I want to talk a little bit about your expertise and the Hartman Center. Do you have some slides you wanted to share today or no?
Sure. Yeah, I only have a couple, and I think I have some high talking points that I think that we can kind of dive into a little bit more specific to the BEARS training and cognitive brain training. If I could, I'm going to see if I can.
Want to share your screen?
Is that okay with you?
Yeah, please do go ahead, and you can just kind of dive into that and a big picture a little bit, and then we can have a conversation if you don't mind me interrupting you here and there.
No, not at all. All right. So just high level talking points. My name is Dr. Jonathan Hartman. I'm a chiropractic neurologist. I've had the privilege of working in the orthopedic realm for, almost 15 years now. And I've felt this underserved population, this demographic of brain injury, and it has really served me in a really wonderful capacity to work with these people, myself having my fair share of concussions and head injuries throughout sports, because as a kid, the treatment that I was exposed to 25 years ago was completely different than what exists currently. And I wish we knew then what we know now about this. And this is what's given me the opportunity to want to serve my community in working with concussion and brain injury. So I've gone through this program to the best of my ability on trying to provide my patients in my caseload some type of means to help remediate deficits in executive and cognitive function. With stroke and different types of acquired brain injuries, and even some types of certain traumatic brain injuries, there can be a motoric output, or maybe there's a deficit in the way the person moves, or they have dizziness, or maybe they have instability that you can help rehabilitate based on the neurodiagnostic testing that we do in our office. But when it comes to executive function deficits, learning, working memory, language, and having the ability to have fluid conversations with people, it's really hard to, it was hard for me to find a way to help those people that were suffering from cognitive deficits. So that's where this cognitive brain training powered by BEARS came through. And it's been a game changer for us. It's really helped elevate the level of care that we offer for patients. And I can show you a little bit about what that program is. We offer three different models: essential, integrative, and intensive, based on what the client needs, where their deficits are. We've had because of COVID and the way that this program has pivoted, we're actually able to offer this program virtually. So, I have patients everywhere from California, Pennsylvania, Virginia, Florida, Costa Rica. As long as I have a webcam and a laptop, I can still serve them. And that's been really awesome. When you think about mold exposures and, mold infections in someone's home or their building, we don't, you've heard of a mold remediation company?
Yeah.
Right? You've never heard of a mold accommodation company?
No,
right?
I like where you're
Because,
going.
right? If I just accommodated your mold exposure and I just threw on some new sheetrock and some new paint primer, out of sight, out of mind, great. But that doesn't fix your underlying issue. So the mold companies would be out of business if they were just accommodating your mold exposure. So they have to remediate the deficit. And that's what I think is something that really helps kind of distinguish and separate us apart from the cog rehab world, is that we're trying to provide neuroplastic changes to remediate cognitive deficits. It's a bit harder. It's a bit more involved, but the changes are hardwired. We're trying to hardwire changes. So what I tried to show on this slide is about what does a brain injury have in common with a mold removal company? And it's because we're trying to remediate the deficit and not just provide workarounds. Historically in the past, we thought that, that the brain was hardwired. Once you hit like your early 20s, white matter structure changes are permanent, and that's it, right? Your intelligence is limited, and that's as good as your IQ can become. But now that we know through the breakthroughs of neuroplasticity that the brain is forever plastic, it's forever changing for the good or bad, depending upon the demands that are imposed on it. And cognitive brain training is a neuroplastic program that provides remediations to those deficits for people who have suffered from traumatic and acquired brain injuries. So
Yeah,
that's what I.
Yeah, I
Go ahead.
like that approach. Sorry, I really like that approach and the way that you position that, because so many people who have had an injury and a lot of the post-acute care is trying to prescribe workarounds, right? Compensation, and that never addresses the issue. And as we, talked about a lot yesterday, is if you've had an early concussion early in life and you have these challenges, that root cause is still there. And as you go through life, your full lifespan, those challenges are cumulative on top of that brain injury. So it just gets worse and worse and worse. And unless you really get to the root issue of it and completely, remediate it.
Right. So what we've tried to do then is couple these 4 different pillars of cognitive exercises with aerobic exercise, mindfulness, meditation, and progress tracking. And we've kind of coupled this into our own like special sauce with our neurodiagnostic testing so that we can both quantify objective change and then allow the patient to also provide substantial subjective change so that we can find out together how the patient demonstrates their improvement and then how we as the provider can demonstrate improvement. An example is V&G testing. So it's a type of testing where we take these infrared cameras and they quantify the way the eyes move. And for people who have suffered traumatic brain injuries, there's usually a deficit in a specific type of region that correlates to a certain type of eye movement. And we help use that to kind of localize where the lesion or the area of dysfunction could be. And then we use that as objective data to find out if we're improving the accuracy, the velocity, or maybe even the latency of how the eyes are moving, which is telling us that we're improving brain function. And the cognitive brain training is a means that powers our ability to do that. And the great part is that the fact that it's virtual, my patients typically don't have the ability to drive, right? So even if they live 2 miles down the street from me, it's a caretaker who's got to drive them here, take time from work and spend a few hours with me. And if that's burdensome, we've been able to pivot, offer this virtually. So regardless of where you're living, we can still serve, and there's no decrement in quality of product that we can offer on that. So on these cognitive exercises, there's few different domains of exercises that are that impact higher orders of if I'm not looking, I have a bunch of different screens up here that I'm looking at right now. So you can see on this slide that the impact that the BrainX cognitive training has is designed to focus on specific brain regions from frontal lobe, temporal, parietal, or occipital. And these are cognitive exercises that are specifically tailored to the deficit of each individual. And it's a scalable model. So the way the software is working is that it's continuously trying to push you just past a level of uncomfortable so that you can create plastic changes. Okay. This helps improve higher order cognitive function, which is what we know: attention, concentration, memory, and an important one is also what's called response inhibition. Response inhibition is when, let's say if your kid lashes out in anger because they don't have the cortical development to know when not to say something, we can lose that in response to a concussion or a brain injury. And cognitive brain training is an avenue that helps remediate the deficits in those types of function. Okay, let me keep going here. I'll pull this out of the way. Now, aerobic exercise. So I'm assuming our audience, there's a word that's called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. It's like it's a neurotrophic. It's a hormone that's it's secreted in response to stressful stimuli like exercise. And that's how the brain allows the muscles to get stronger and tendons to get stronger. It's by the secretion of BDNF to create plastic changes in the brain. This program has been validated. I'll actually go into that in a second, about how exercise helps promote the release of growth factors and BDNF into the brain to help plastic change. And what they have found is that by doing, let's say, 20 minutes of exercise prior, 20 minutes of physical exercise prior to a cognitive exercise, it helps improve the outcomes of the cognitive exercise. So, right, when we talk about cerebral blood flow, increased brain-derived neurotrophic factor, and physical improvements in various health metrics. Okay. Now, two other pillars that I'll comment on real quick is mindfulness curriculum. One of the other pillars that the brain training program offers is mindfulness curriculum and meditation. Self-awareness, self-governance, these are aspects of our emotions that we tend to lose when it comes to a concussion or a brain injury. And the platform has been designed to help offer moments of mindfulness guided meditation to help with neuroplastic change. They've actually done fMRI studies on meditation as well, and they have shown that you can improve different areas of the brain, such as the hippocampus, the amygdala, and the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex in response to mindfulness meditation. And that's a great at-home exercise that can be done as well. It's low tech. There's tons of resources that you can download, like Headspace is a app that you can download on your phone that offers guided meditation programs. And it's just consistency that allows to help build bigger brains and better brains on this.
Yeah, I think that's, oh, sorry. The point on mindfulness, I think, is something that the consistency point, right? I think that needs to be emphasized, because people will, mindfulness and meditation is something that you need to practice daily if you're really going to be consistent. I think that's what the research has really shown. And so being able to see the benefits of this is, you've got to have the consistency if you're going to require that. Are you guys recommending any time amount with this program on that? Any daily time amount?
So for mindfulness curriculum?
Yeah.
Right. So for mindfulness, what they've shown is that consistency 3 to 4 days a week for 20 minutes was enough to create neuroplastic change in the brain.
Okay. Thank you for that.
Yep, sure. Yeah. So what they've done for their BrainX program is they've been able to show through fMRI studies that they were able to decrease the functional connectivity, or the white matter connectivity, between different areas of the brain. Now, people wonder and say, well, geez, if you decrease the connectivity of the brain, that's bad. But it's really not. What that means is that you created more efficient pathways. So rather than having a 5-lane highway to get all these cargo trucks from point A to point B to deliver goods or service, AKA a bunch of neurons to deliver a message across a different region of the brain, maybe you only need one road and it's a superhighway. Right? So there's more efficiency. There's less cars on the road. There's less wear and tear on the body.
Yeah, which increases processing speed, memory, and all of it. Well, you've got the list there, right? Concentration, et cetera.
Right. Lastly, is through this progress tracking. And for me, this is one of the best markers is getting to show people in real time every 30, 60, 90 days where their benchmarks are. And I could probably switch slides and show you. I have some pre and post studies of some patients who have suffered some brain injuries, and the progress tracking is well worth the price of admission, because the level of independence that these people can regain, me clinically, has been unmatched. With regards to the cognitive enhancement, this has been a tool that was missing in my toolbox for quite some time. And it's been a blessing to be able to layer this into our treatments. And the progress tracking provides the real time, so you can show the client their level of engagement. You can show them their accuracy, the time in the program, and you can show them how they're progressing through the program. And then you go through these assessment forms so that you can actually quantify the patient's subjective change. So it's not just me telling you based on my VNG testing or posturography or autonomic testing that, great, I see that we've improved brain function, but for the patient to be able to say, hey, I feel brain improvement as well, and it's demonstrated through the quality of life assessment forms, that's what's been awesome. I can actually stop the screen share real quick. And if you give me just a second, I can switch presentations and I can show you what I'm referring to. And if you bear with me just a second.
Yeah, let's get that. I think those case studies really do help illustrate the effectiveness of this. Is the BrainX, that's the app, right, that you're referring to?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that's the Highmark, I think it's called Highmark Interactive. Is that who your partner is on that?
No.
No, okay.
Say that again.
Well, there's a company out of Toronto, Highmark Interactive, that I know has an app that I thought ABI Wellness really partnered with on their tracking system, but maybe not.
The QOL assessment is, oh gosh, I honestly can't remember right now, and I apologize. It's a neuropsych cognitive test that's well established in psychiatry, and it's been validated for, like, I think over 3 or 4 decades. I just cannot remember the technical term for that test.
Yeah, and you're saying that test, though, is sort of the foundation of what the app is testing. Or implementing. Is that right? So
are you talking about the assessment forms or the BrainX?
The BrainX. Am I mixing those two up?
I'm not sure. That's why
Yeah. So the assessment form that you're talking about, that you're measuring,
yep.
That's the cognitive psych eval that's been around for years and years. But BrainX is BrainX using that in its tracking
in its
process?
assessments.
Okay.
So 2 types of tracking, right? So we have the subjective quality of life tracking, and then we also have the data metrics from the BrainX platform. They're both tracking data. So on the BrainX platform, when I go through the patient's dashboard, I can see every exercise in real time, and I can check accuracy. I can check how long it took them to complete a round of whatever specific modality that was. And then every treatment visit that the patient is involved in the program, you can compare that, and then you can see if they're improving their cognitive efficiency by cutting down the amount of time it takes to complete the exercise.
Okay.
So that's the BrainX tracking. And then you have the subjective tracking, which is also what I'm going to show you right now.
Okay. All right. Thanks for clarifying that.
So sure. This is a patient who had a brain injury from falling off a horse, presenting with severe visual, spatial, and cognitive deficits. You're going to see these white lines are her baselines. And through, a matter of 5 months, you can see that this is a metric of cognitive improvement, a pretty significant improvement in cognitive baseline. And this program, we've been together since September of 2022, and I just took this last month, but this is a very, very statistically significant improvement in cognitive health, social health, self-management, productivity, and community engagement. So there's various domains and subdomains that we track and monitor on her to ensure that we're on the right path. So attention and concentration, general concerns, communication, executive function, learning and memory. One of the ways she's noticed improvement is her ability to actually get back into playing tennis. She's liked to play it as a sport, and she hasn't been able to because of visual spatial deficits. And her ophthalmologist, her neuro-ophthalmologist, just contacted us 2 weeks ago because she did not understand why her prescription was changing so quickly. But through changing brain function, she's been improving her visual processing deficits, which is why her glasses prescriptions are changing. So these are various domains that she has marked considerable improvement on. I'm going to show you another patient who has a brain injury, birth trauma, and psychogenic non-epileptic seizures. And if you look at her domains of cognitive health, this has been a profound benchmark of improvement. But her physical independence has also skyrocketed. This is a massive statistical significance here. And if you look at her productivity domains, this is also a massive measurement of improvement. So these are the different domains that we try to test for, both functional performance indicators and global, this is called TBI, quality of life assessment. And in these subdomains, her fatigue has decreased. This woman she works from home because she has about 3 to 4 episodes a day, requiring about 45 minutes to an hour of a seizure episode. And she has reduced this significantly to the point now where she's actually, this gets me all worked up now because she's going back to work now twice a week for the first time in years.
Yeah, congratulations. That's so
and
inspiring.
it's me. I'm a servant to her, and I'm giving her body and her brain the innate ability to do what it's designed to do. You'll notice here, and you might wonder why her emotional health has gone down. This is often the case initially with being in the program because you've improved self-awareness. So now you've understood the gravity of your injury and the gravity of your circumstances. So there's sometimes a little bit of a pullback with understanding, oh man, this is my circumstances right now. But just like an arrow, right, with being pulled back in order for it to be trajectory going forward, this is short term. I'm not worried about this whatsoever for her because you can see that these markers have just increased so much. Like this productivity of her fatigue going down, pain interference going down, this is awesome. This couldn't be any better. I'll give you two other examples.
John, how long, before you go to the next one, how long did you work with that patient?
This is August to February. So we're looking at about just under 6 months.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep.
And the first patient that you highlighted, how long was that? Do you remember?
5 months.
5 months. Okay.
Yeah. I'm going to show you a gentleman.
Typical?
No, it really depends, right, on the nature, the extent, and severity of the injury. That's a great question, though. I think I'll show you on here. So this patient I've actually been working with for over 2 years. You're going to see here that this is March of 21, February of 23. And if you look at these colors, white, gray, black, notice a change that we made in 1 year between 2021, 2022, minimal change. Okay, this person had he had 2 severe brain injuries. And I've actually had the pleasure of working with him for several years, from being wheelchair bound to learning how to walk again to, he's changed my life. And that's how I got into this program. But now you can see that with enough time, we finally made a dent in this. This is an example of a very severe brain injury where after 2 years, we have finally started to make a change. But that's specific to the nature and condition of what this gentleman presented with. But I want to show you that regardless of the severity, with time in neuroplasticity, the brain has the ability to make a change. It's not going to happen overnight, but it can happen if you give it what it needs. And that is specific to the frequency, intensity, and the duration of the stimulus. If it's intense enough, frequent enough, and long enough, it's sometimes where the provider or the patient might give up. It's not that the program can't help, okay? But as long as someone is committed and is committed as much as I want to be, I don't care how old you are. I don't care how severe it is. If you're willing to put in the time, who am I to take away the hope from someone? That's not fair. And that's what I want to show through this. The last example I'm going to show you. So this is another metric of this is fantastic that he's been able to actually improve executive function and learning memory. Because if people like this are just written off saying, just go be with your family and live your life, this gentleman was just barely touching his late 40s. And when his 2-year-old daughter, when I met about 6 or 7 years ago, she was 3 at the time. And then when she hugged my leg and asked me, are you going to help my daddy? I will never forget that, because that's what changed me. And that's what helped me bring this program here.
Wow.
Last example I'm going to show you is actually, do we have time for 2 more? Is that okay?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. This is another dear patient, jaws of life, massive, severe, traumatic brain injury from a car accident. She was medevaced out. She's on permanent disability. Written off, right? No hope.
Yeah.
This is from April of 21 to November of 21. Okay, so we got looking at about 9 months. I'm sorry, 6 months. Look at that change in cognitive improvement. This is massive.
Phenomenal.
Every domain, her physical health, her emotional well-being, her social health, her cognitive health, all of these markers are, and that's not me doing anything to her. That's me giving her brain the opportunity to make a change. And this is really, really good to see.
And John, how long after her accident did she come to see you?
That's a real good question. So if we're going from memory, I used to treat her, oh boy. This didn't exist at the time in which I started treating her. When I first started treating her, she was in a walker and a wheelchair. And we have to be going back to maybe, the way I know is when I lost my hair, and I was treating her when I had hair. So we're looking at least, I think, 5 or 6 years ago. And we worked exclusively on regaining motor function, learning how to walk again. And now she can walk. She's got a cane, but that's off a walker. And so maybe 10 years, we started this program, I think maybe 10 years post brain injury.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and
Okay.
I think that's something to maybe you can speak to, right? We had a question here in the chat about, does it matter what age? It doesn't matter your age. While your neuroplasticity is, more, I guess, active in your younger years, it certainly doesn't need to be. Certainly there's neuroplasticity as you age that you can tap into, and certainly it doesn't matter the number of years that has transpired since an injury. Do you have anything else you want to add to that?
Yeah, because those are all great points. I think that it's something to keep in mind is that as a patient gets older, there's a term called the total toxic burden that they might accumulate throughout their life, and their ability to allow me to help them with that makes this program more effective. So it's not that the older you are or the longer the brain injury has been that your chances of change are less. That's not the case. But if we can find out if there's maybe blood-brain barrier permeability, if there's some type of gut barrier permeability issue that's causing brain inflammation, we might want to take a look and address that in order to make the cognitive remediation program more effective. So I'm not concerned about age. I'm more concerned about level of commitment regardless of age. And to me, that's more of a prognostic factor that determines if I can help them.
Okay, great.
So this, I mean, just seeing this in her, I mean, again, this is amazing. Just the fact that fatigue gone down, headache pain, she would get Botox injections into her scalp to help with her pain that we've been able to mitigate. Anger, anxiety, depression, emotional discontrol, all decreased, statistically significant. Resiliency has boomed. Positive affect and well-being has increased considerably, not to mention her physical independence has improved. And then her cognitive, her attention, concentration, communication, executive function, learning and memory, the fact that her family members have noticed that she can maintain conversations now with more than one person. She hasn't had that ability since her brain injury. Lastly, I mean, I can keep going about her fatigue has decreased, her independence has improved. I mean, these are all markers. My last patient, she's actually a neighbor of mine who has been on disability for toxic mold exposure. She worked in a building with no windows, and she had black mold above her office room for about 3 years. And yeah, this changed her life. She's got 3 kids and she's been on disability. And she came to me, hey, can you make a change? Can you help me? And we enrolled her into the program. And this is from June of 21 to February. This is a course of about 8 months. But look at this change.
Yeah, that's the return of life, right? I mean, we talk about neuroplasticity changing the trajectory of your life, and this is certainly is such a great example. We have a couple of questions just to confirm. This patient that you're talking about, somebody wanted to confirm that you treated her 10 years or somewhere close to 10 years post incident. Is that accurate?
That's correct. Yeah. Obviously, the sooner I can get to someone, the better my chances are of helping. But, it's not often, if I'm the 10th, 11th, 12th physician that they've seen throughout their healing journey. To answer your question, yes, my goal is to get to them as fast as I can.
Okay, great. Another couple of questions. Is this something a caregiver can help the patient with if the patient struggles with routine and initiation?
Yes. And unfortunately, if initiation and motivation are lacking, then having a caretaker to help facilitate the program. I offer the program virtually, and it's a live, almost like a classroom setting where I engage the patient and help act as a facilitator, trying to keep them motivated. But part of the benefits of the platform is that I offer it outside of this classroom setting. So when I speak about frequency, intensity, and duration of stimulus, I give you the opportunity to be in this program outside of our scheduled classroom hours. So if you want to get some extra brain training in on a Saturday or a Sunday, or even on an early morning when I'm not available, I give you that opportunity. So if the caretaker wants to be involved during that process and that healing journey, then I am all for it. Because it would be no different, right, than going to the gym maybe once a month. It's not going to make a change. But maybe if you have a buddy who's willing to take you maybe 2-3 days a week and train with you and work out with you, it's only going to be more beneficial.
Okay, there's another question here. Is the program helpful in TBI where, along with compromised cognitive abilities, the patient is also nonverbal? I think maybe this is a broader question, right? And maybe we can put some parameters around what's a good fit and maybe what might not be a good fit for your level of care with this.
So I would never, like I said before, is that I would never take hope away from someone. If the patient is non-ambulatory and they don't have the ability to move, so let's say if they're a quadriplegic, then this would be more challenging, which would require a facilitator helping type in the answers into the computer for the patient. But again, if they're nonverbal, but if they still have a facilitator, I'm not taking away an opportunity to help someone. I'd rather rule it out saying that maybe the patient can't tolerate it versus me saying you're not a good fit. I'd much rather them get to try the program first then let them be the judge and say, you know what, they can't do it, versus me say they're not a good fit for it.
Okay. All right, great. Well, I imagine with these kind of stories, you can't wait to hop out of bed in the morning and get to work, because if you're having and experiencing that sort of life-changing impact, it's got to be motivating.
I get to see people's lives change every day. I will never take away an opportunity for someone to have that.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, I know that we've talked a lot about the Bears program. Would you like to just maybe step back a little bit and talk about the full range of care that you provide at the Hartman Center?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, typically for, specific to this type of audience, what we do is we dedicate some time where we can talk in a bit more detail, find out what the areas of domain or deficits are. And then we try to determine, both the length and intensity of the exam and neurodiagnostics to find out what specific regions of the brain might be compromised and how we might want to address and rehabilitate and remediate those deficits. Okay. So if the patient is local, right? So if they're within driving distance, some people have flown, they get a hotel and they spend a week with us. All right. So if we meet them where they're at and what they want to do, we go through examination and diagnostics. And if they want to initiate treatment, we're happy to help remediate those deficits. Then when it comes to brain training, what we try to do is kind of intimately marry that couple of finding the cognitive deficits with regards to diagnostic findings and see if we can improve them together. Taken together, we might try to marry that now with some type of functional blood chemistry and find out if a child or an adult with either if it's a genetic predisposition to something or if it's an environmental circumstance, try to open up the hood, look at their physiology a little bit more, see if there's some type of inflammatory marker that's driving the cognitive dysfunction, and try to help with that by providing a nutritional support program to support their physiology. So we're trying to go bottom up to try to feed that brain as much nutrients as we can, and then going top down cognitively to help remediate the executive function deficits. I actually have a really cool slide that I like to show people about, dysbiosis in the gut and how these things can contribute to neuroinflammation, and how we want to try to address both issues on improving gut function to improve brain function and vice versa. Lastly, I'll leave you with this, is that the cognitive brain training program is a means to improve capacity, right? Is that we're not trying to provide strategies and workarounds for cognitive deficits. We're actually trying to see if we can promote neuroplastic change to improve brain function rather than accommodate brain deficits. I like to think of growing a brain, right? If you look at plants, where does a plant need to grow, right? It's food, water, and oxygen. And what do we as adults and as humans need? It's really not much different, right? We need food, water, and oxygen. We also need love, but we're not much different than a plant. So if a plant is wilting, what do you give the plant? You give it food, water, and oxygen. If a plant is sick and it's wilting, you would give it what it needs, right? So you wouldn't want to just spray the leaves green to make it look like it's healthy. I got this from a dear colleague of mine in Texas. I can't take credit for this, but I love this analogy because we don't just try to remediate deficits. We don't try to just provide, there's a time and a place for medication, but if we can actually restore executive function instead of just accommodating the deficit, we're giving the body what it needs to thrive, not what it just needs to live.
You mentioned the gut health issue. Are there what sort of integration with nutrition is included in your programs?
So depending on the level and depth of intensity of the program, right? So with specific to cognitive brain training, it's a tool in our toolbox that we use to help improve executive function. If they want to add on the layer of going through lab work, I'm happy to do that. It really just depends, because sometimes people already come to us with extensive lab work done. So it's not like we just incorporate that into every patient. It really depends on what they've already have, what they're coming to us with, because oftentimes we're not the first person that they're seeing.
Yeah, you're more likely the last resort, right? And that seems like a trend in a lot of these more complex cases where people aren't getting well. It takes a while to find the right person that can help them.
Yeah, but that's our goal, right? Is that we're here to serve, we're here to help people to the best of our ability. And if we can look for, here's a really good talking point, right? Is that for people who have suffered brain injuries, who have never had gastrointestinal issues, up to a third, I think it's 33 to 37% of people who have suffered a brain injury end up developing leaky gut. Leaky gut is a term that means is that the intestinal stability, the intestinal lining starts to become porous, open, which allows foreign proteins into the bloodstream. The immune system gets a little confused and it says, I don't recognize these foreign proteins. And it creates an inflammatory response in the gut. That oftentimes can cause leaky brain or blood-brain barrier permeability. So a concussion or a brain injury can cause gastrointestinal issues through a positive feedback loop, which upregulates the inflammation in the brain. And that's what ends up contributing or exacerbating the cognitive deficits. So in
Wow.
addition to cognitive brain training, what we try to do is sometimes test for these things to help the patients understand that we can improve the plastic changes by making some diet and lifestyle changes. We might try to add on that additional layer of service if they are not educated or if they are not familiar with that.
Yeah, I actually haven't heard those statistics, so that's something new to me. I mean, when you are in this community and you hear that, you often hear those go together, but there's not been, I haven't come across a really good explanation for how that symbiosis works. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure, yep, because it's
Dr.
really hard to treat one without the other.
Yeah, yeah. Did you have an exercise you wanted to share with the group here today?
Sure. I mean, it's really hard to demonstrate the cognitive brain training, virtually in this setting right now, but I think a very safe, really powerful one is just modulating the parasympathetic immune system. So 3 different exercises. Everyone's heard of, hopefully, the vagus nerve. Vagus nerve is a cranial nerve that leaves the brain that controls autonomics, digestion, basically all of the bodily functions that are on autopilot, right? Typically, when we stand, we don't think about increasing our heart rate or our blood pressure. That just happens subconsciously. There's 3 different exercises, or maybe a couple different exercises that you can do to help with that. One of them is called box breathing, or purposeful box breathing, where if you imagine a box equal sides, where your inhalation, pause, exhalation, pause are all the same time, that helps modulate the parasympathetic nervous system, which helps dampen down sympathetic activity. In response to a brain injury, if we have sympathetic hyperarousal, heightened fight or flight response, we can't be in a state of brain healing, which is where we need parasympathetic activity for. So a simple modality is what's called box breathing, where you might breathe in, right? So your inhalation for, let's say, 5 seconds, pause for 5 seconds, exhale for 5 seconds, pause until your next breath for 5 seconds, is an extremely powerful tool to work on parasympathetic activity. Being mindful of that and trying to focus in on your breathing whenever you can. You're reading, you're driving, cooking, just walking in the park. That's a really, really powerful exercise to help modulate parasympathetic activity, which helps with immune system recovery. Another way to do that is by, let's say if you're brushing your teeth and you're gargling, really loud gargling, like you're singing a song while gargling, is another way that actually helps activate the vagus nerve. And that little punching bag in the back of your throat, the uvula, right? When you're brushing your tongue, and if you actually poked that to initiate a gag reflex, that's actually like doing push-ups for the brainstem at the pontomedullary area of the brainstem, which helps modulate the parasympathetics.
Okay, that's kind of, Well, there's a lot of directions I go with that on a joke, but I'll save it. Yeah, I mean, we've heard, every day this week, some of the exercises that have been brought up have been around control of the parasympathetic, using breathing to do that. And so I think it just really reiterates how important that is in trying to regulate your emotions overall. And on Friday, we'll hear from the Gupta program, Akash Gupta, who is going to help us look at some amygdala and insula retraining programs to kind of maybe take that to the next level. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
I think we're sort of coming to a close here then. There are a couple more questions here we can get to. Let's see. One question: do you experience a setback in cognitive health while training someone when she or he suffers from COVID-19?
Yeah. So they've been working on some validation reports to show how this improves markers and cognitive domains of dysfunction from long COVID. And I think that this has been a game changer with regards to the executive function deficits subsequent to long COVID. There's a white paper, I believe, on my website that you can download at the hartmancenter.com when you click on the brain training section, where there's a white paper that goes into brain fog remediation following long COVID using the BEARS program.
Yeah, and that was a question earlier, research supporting the BEARS program overall. And I know ABI has done some of that. And so maybe it would be helpful if you just kind of go through some of that research. The question was around, is it FDA approved, which, I'll just let you address that, Dr. Hartman.
Sure. I mean, with regards to the FDA approval, if whoever's asking this question in short, I don't know the answer to that yet. I think the answer is no for the time being, because it is still in a review process. But this has been validated like across the country. The FDA will approve it, I guess, whenever it gets to it right now, but it's not something that I know it's in the wheelhouse for FDA approval currently. But I think that there's a cascade of events that need to happen with insurance payers and companies in order to demonstrate whatever proof of concepts, because then you have to go through these CPT coding authorizations if it's going to go through FDA approval. And that's an arduous process. It's in the works. That's the best I can tell you right now.
Yeah, I mean, we've been looking at that in general for what it takes for neuroplastic therapies to sort of reach that level. And there's a tremendous amount of research that needs to be done. And maybe you can talk a little bit about the research that has been done for BEARS, if you have that knowledge, because I know that they've done, quite a bit of work out there. Is there something specific other than the brain fog white paper you could maybe point them to?
Sure. I mean, I would have to find the paper that Sean Porter, one of the chief science officers, has mentioned, because the functional MRI study was really nice when they were able to show that the white matter connectivity made plastic changes every 3 months in the program, and those stuck, demonstrated the efficacy of the program. Something else that has been done is how in neuropsychiatry, both Weschler, there were third-party neuropsych tests that were being administered outside of this program, so that, like, children, for example, when they were in school and a neuropsych would run an evaluation, and they would see that in the 3 months that the child was not enrolled in school, how their IQ scores had actually improved. And the neuropsychs wonder, how the heck is this possible? The kid hasn't had any services all summer. How is their fluid reasoning and executive functioning improving? And that was through the BrainX platform. So there's actually a real good book called Brain School through Howard Eaton. And he's a author, he was a principal who actually observed this and wrote about this in his book. Dr. Norman Deutsch, who's a world-renowned neurologist, he wrote a book many years ago called The Brain That Changes Itself. And that's actually what got me involved in this program. Is one of the last chapters in the book. He wrote a chapter about Barbara Arrowsmith Young and how she was a mover and a shaker in the industry and how she was helping remediate children's dysfunction in this program. So The Brain That Changes Itself and Brain School are two great resources.
Yeah, and I'll actually add those references to the end of this recording when we put it out. And I'll also put a link on there to the ABI wellness site that has the research documentation on there, and then the brain fog on your site as well, Dr. Hartman. So everybody can have access to that. I was just making a note of that. A couple of last minute questions here. And, while I look through these, maybe Dr. Hartman, it would be, could you maybe share some information around the program's cost and maybe the opportunity to be able to recover some of that through insurance?
So unfortunately, we've been working on this for the last 2 years, right? Is that there is no CPT code in the United States that this doesn't fall under, because this doesn't fall under a cognitive rehabilitation code, is that this is typically gone through self-pay. So self-pay is really determined upon the intensity of the program, the hours they're going to be in the program, as well as there's funding through the state. So each state, depending on where you are, has what's called the Traumatic Brain Injury Fund. And 2 years ago, we were actually able to become an approved vendor through the state of New Jersey. So we do have approval through the state for state funding. So depending on the person's availability, if they are supplemented through the state, through the TBI fund, we can actually get approval for funding to allow them to be in the program.
Oh, that's exciting. I have not heard that. Is that something all states have?
Almost all states have a TBI fund. Getting into that fund is a bit challenging because you need to know who to speak to. But we've been approved as a provider through the state to offer the program if someone is enrolled.
Okay, excellent. Yeah, and I'll look that link up and put that in the document as well. Okay, it looks like the question we have is there a virtual training program for a person of age 33 years affected by rabies encephalitis who lost cognitive, speech, and visual abilities? So the visual.
Yes. So I don't know the level of visual abilities. I don't know if it's completely blind or not. So depending on the level of visual impairment, it's really hard for me to answer that. Speech and cognition, I'm not opposed to. I'm not going to say no. Visual ability, I don't know if that's a complete disability or not. So I would just need to know more details about that. If that person has the ability.
He responded,
Yes.
I'm sorry, it says close to blind and no speech.
I would say it would present as a challenge. I don't want to say it's impossible.
Okay. You're such an optimist, Dr. Hartman.
Yeah, I'm not, like, who am I to say no? If I can meet the person where they're at, I'll do everything in my power. For all I know, I have to maybe change the monitor to a size of a television screen so they can see a little bit better.
Yeah.
And if they can see the computer better on a 55-inch TV instead of a 12-inch monitor, maybe that's a workaround.
Let's see, caffeine, one last question, and then I think we are going to have to end it there. Is caffeine recommended for TBI, or is it, should that be taken out? No caffeine.
Again, that's specific to the extent of the injury, right? So depending on the mechanism, depending on the goals of the person, right? Are we trying to get an immediate vasoconstrict effect or a vasodilatory effect? That's not I don't know enough about the person to provide a safe answer.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, I will make sure I include Dr. Hartman's contact information in this. Again, if you want to reach out today before you get a recording, it's the TheHartman center.com. You can reach him there, and I will just offer any any closing remarks for you, Dr. Hartman, before we sign off?
No, thank you for giving me an opportunity to expose the program to more people. Not enough people know about this program. It's been a privilege. So thank you for the opportunity. I hope this helped.
Yeah, I think it was a great session. And please join us tomorrow. We've got 2 more days for our lunch and learn. Renee Mills, who is a speech therapist and focuses on brain injury, will join us tomorrow. And on Friday, we have the Gupta program, as I mentioned. So 12 p.m. Eastern. I hope everyone was able to get through their lunch while they were watching. And we will see you tomorrow. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.
All right. Thanks again. Bye-bye.